everybody, and welcome to the network. Welcome to Positive Fandom. I am your host, Artem, and tonight we are going to be reviewing the new Ahsoka series, Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. I have with me tonight Catherine Cook. Catherine, how are you tonight?
Good.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me on this review. And of course, we are talking about the new Ahsoka series, which has had a lot of advertisements. It's gotten a lot of attention and certainly a lot of anticipation as to how this series will be. They were kind enough to give us 2 episodes, which we're going to be looking at tonight. And certainly there's a lot to be said about these episodes. I think when I honestly knew, I think we all knew it was going to involve Grand Admiral Thrawn. We were going to be seeing Hera as well as Sabine. Catherine, did you think these first 2 episodes, did they make you want to see more episodes of Ahsoka? What were your first impressions of these first 2 episodes?
I liked it. There's no fluff there. It's good story, keeps focus on the necessary characters, good pacing, and it jumps right into it. Here's a story. We know what Ahsoka's been up to. We immediately catch up with the prisoner from season 2 of Mandalorian, and it's like, here we go, and we're off to the races. And I like that. It's not like dragging it out through long exposition or anything. Yeah, there's some stuff that they retread for people who haven't seen Rebels and whatnot, and they even reshot the epilogue from season 4 of Rebels in live action for the end of the second episode. But yeah, I like it so far. I think it's really good. A lot better writing than the start of Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian season 3 by a long shot. And Kenobi, this is much better than that. So I'm definitely eager because I like that it's just like, okay, because it's very simple. Okay, we have to find Thrawn. The bad guys are after him, and they got a leg up on us. Let's go. And that's like what everybody's been waiting to see since Rebels season 4 ended. Is like, where did Ezra and Thrawn go? And so yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it does feel like a dream come true to finally be able to revisit where Ezra is and this mystery. Certainly something that not just Ahsoka has been wondering, but Sabine and probably everybody in the group from Rebels wants to know where he is and what has happened to him. And we certainly do see remnants of that in this particular, these first 2 episodes, where we do see a Sabine pining more or less over missing Ezra, who I suspect she probably cares for him very deeply, maybe even more than what we are indicated that they may be friends or from that message that was sent. So let's just go ahead and look. I did pull up some of the photos from the first episode there with, of course, this is going to be Rosario Dawson. I got to change the perspective 1 second. Sorry. Rosario Dawson here starring as Ahsoka. This is kind of, the first real series. Not that we didn't see Ahsoka as an adult in some of the other Disney Star Wars shows, but this is going to be the one where we really see her as an adult for the first time outside of the animated series. And certainly Rosario Dawson does a lovely job of being Ahsoka Tano. There's certainly no doubt about that. Catherine, we're presented where Ahsoka Tano is searching for something. What did you think of the scrolling with the letters, the red letters in the beginning of the first episode?
I like that they brought back the crawl. I don't like that it's in the way that they did it. Like, bring back the excitement of the big boom, like Star Wars. Here we go with the dramatic classic music and the slanted scroll. But yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. I think I would have liked that dramatic crawl as well, with the explosive music as well, Catherine, because it is a celebration to even get a show like this. We know you can't always get something like this. We've waited for so long, and certainly this is something we've all wanted. So, and they do set it up for us very nicely. There's no question about what's going on, and certainly I know there have been questions by other fans who have not watched Rebels or not as familiar with Ahsoka Tano. Do they have to watch it? I don't think they have to. I think the scroll explains everything you need to know. in order to understand where they're starting off at. And Ahsoka finds herself searching for this wayfinder. At first, I thought it might have been a holocron, but it clearly isn't. I can't remember every time that I've seen a wayfinder in the series or even in the movies, but certainly she needs this so that she can identify where, or at least locate where she believes Thrawn is. And a lot of this also coincides with the notion of her seeing Hera. And apparently, at some point, Sabine was her apprentice. Now, and I use this word, I don't know whether apprentice or mentor is the word that I should be using, Catherine. But let's say for practicality's sake, after, and of course, there are spoilers here tonight, guys. So I'm just letting you all know that. And at the bottom, it does say spoilers. With the last time that we saw Ahsoka have a situation where she might have taken on an apprentice, it was with Grogu, and of course that was not, in her opinion, an appropriate apprentice and master relationship. So she did not take him on. But Catherine, all this time, I guess she's been apprenticing Sabine. Did we know about this before, or is this new?
I didn't really get the sense that we knew that before. They just kind of dropped hints that that's, I guess, sort of what happened after Rebels season 4, that there was something beginning. Because we remember from Rebels that Kanan started teaching Sabine, and then he got killed. And so they didn't really follow up after that, because then just the end of season 4 jumps ahead to that epilogue where they're going after Thrawn, presumably, at which they again reshot in live action. So it's not exactly clear how long Ahsoka was trying to teach Sabine before she took off, or for what exact reason. So that's a little hazy.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think that there's any issue with her doing that. It seems to make sense that she would have to have some guidance from her. If I remember correctly, Sabine's family are a very strong and powerful Mandalorian family. So there certainly wasn't an issue about them having an influence over her training or technique. She had studied with not with the Rebels, but with the Empire. So Sabine has had a very interesting upbringing when it comes to being a Mandalorian. And then, here, here's another shot of Ahsoka Tano. She's at this temple looking for this wayfinder again. She locates it. She has this interesting fight with these droids. And I did want to ask you, what did you think about that fight that Ahsoka had against these droids that obviously wanted to obtain the wayfinder as well?
I thought it was clever how she beats him. It's like, instead of just standing in the middle where it's like, okay, are you going to use the Force to blow them all away or what? Instead, she goes underground and cuts them all off. And this is, of course, the information which Morgan Elsbeth presumably told her at the end of that episode in season 2 of Mandalorian, where Ahsoka holds her at lightsaber point. She's like, where's Thrawn? And then they didn't reveal what she said, but apparently she told her that the map to find him was here, but we don't exactly know why this map leads to Thrawn. It's like, what, like, that's something I'm kind of unclear on. Like, who made the map? Why exactly do we know that it leads there? I did think the temple in the subchamber was kind of interesting. I was getting a lot of Fifth Element vibes from everything that was in there, with the image of the figures on the wall and the triangular. Of course, it ends up being like sand or ash. She breaks down to get the map out of it. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Always fun to see little references to that pop up. And so, I thought that was really, and I was really surprised too that the droids, when they decide to blow themselves up, that the range of the explosions are like, because at first I thought, well, she's run away, you've missed your chance. And then it's like, oh, wow, that's a really huge explosion.
Yeah, you make a good point with that. Certainly, I was not expecting there to be an explosion and for the entire place to go up in that manner. However, I also do think it is very interesting. And here's a shot of the temple. I was just looking for something like that. It's a kind of a photo, but you can kind of see the walls and the symbolism inside of it. It looks pretty cool. She was determined to figure out what she had to do and maneuver whatever mechanism she had to do in order to get the wayfinder. But yes, those droids, and I had asked a number of people about it. Those droids are not droids that are guarding the temple. They're in pursuit of Ahsoka Tano because they want that wayfinder, right, Catherine?
Yes, because in the cold open, when Balin's skull breaks Morgan Elsbeth out of jail, she presumably would have told him right off the bat, Ahsoka forced me to give up the goods. You got to go there and get the map before she does, which gives us a sense of timing in terms of where the timeline of the show must be. These first two episodes must begin like immediately after Ahsoka's episode in season 2 of Mandalorian, because Ahsoka obviously wouldn't have wasted any time after interrogating Elsbeth about where do I find Thrawn and what I'm getting out of it. So that helps us get kind of orients us with it a bit more. But I would like to learn more about this temple. Like, who are these figures? They bear a somewhat passing resemblance to the Force priestesses from Clone Wars season 6 when Yoda goes to the heart of the galaxy. Vaguely like that. The carvings on the wall almost look similar to the World Between Worlds, but not exactly. Because I remember that because the Ahsoka logo that they first put out like last year or whatever had like a World Between Worlds type feel to it. But now after seeing this, like maybe it was referring to this more so, which is a star chart. So and granted they blew the place to smithereens already, but I would be interested to learn more about it.
Yeah, I think we all would like to learn more about it. And certainly there's a lot of questions that everybody has about what's going on here. And just to go back a little bit more, incidentally, we do have the new characters. And there's kind of like, where Elspeth is being transported for her trial. She's on a ship and she's going through space, as you mentioned, Catherine. And interestingly enough, as the ship is traveling, they get two unwelcome visitors. And those visitors, of course, you can see one of them here, played by Ray Stevenson, who just passed away recently. And I had kind of made a snarky remark about the notion of when they arrive at the ship and, the captain on the pilot or on the bridge, is so surprised to hear anybody at all kind of knocking at the door. But they kind of let him in. And I made a snarky remark about, well, I guess if he had said it was Orville Redenbacher, they just would have let him in anyway, just the way that it seemed. But I think that their attitude was that, well, it's a prison ship and they have prisoners there. And no one would really be interested in seeing any of these people who are on board. But apparently there was a prison breakout of Elsmith. And when she was liberated, Catherine, I got the sense that she knew she was going to be liberated. She was wearing a yellow jumpsuit. And I also said like yellow is the new black, because it felt like she just kind of stepped right back into her normal business as usual. Do you think she was running things from behind bars even?
Well, it's like Ahsoka said, she probably hired those mercenaries and, contingency plans in the event of being caught. I also thought that was funny with the captain when he, sees the ship and doesn't know whether they should let him in or not and decides casually to do so. And I noticed that from the design of the bridge of the ship, and when he gets up to leave, he says, "You have the bridge." I'm like, couldn't you have just said you have the con? Just do it. Like, just say that for us. Which I thought that'd be funny. But yeah, she's clearly hired these people to come and get her. But as we find out later, they're not merely mercenaries, they're believers, as is she. So perhaps she knew them from long before Ahsoka ever showed up, and maybe she was just expecting them to come and rescue her.
Yeah, that is something to think about. And certainly they are believers, and their comments about what's going on is very interesting. And of course, this we find out at some point, and I'm not going in exact order, but we find out that he is a Jedi who left the Order, I guess, after or disappeared on or around or near the end of the Clone Wars, not too dissimilar from when Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, ironically enough. So that's something that they have in common in that regard, which I also find quite fascinating. He has what appears to be a young apprentice with him. And certainly once he steps on the ship, I think any captain would know something was going down. This wasn't going to be an ordinary day on your ship. Certainly something was going to happen. They looked way too serious and way too dramatic for it to just be an ordinary business as usual day.
Yeah. And that was weird too, because the captain is sizing him up. Could tell they're not like here to just, whatever they're here to do. And he's got like basically 6 security officers with, measly helmets and little pistols. And it's like, You're going to insult this guy and challenge his rank on who he is and just say, I don't believe you, blah, 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 and talk all tough to him. And you're counting on 6 guys with little water pistols by comparison to somebody you believe is a Jedi with Jedi training and lightsabers, and that's going to solve it. And so when they get mowed down, it's like, well, you asked for it. You could have played along and gone along with the ruse to see, where's this going, and get, until you had some more, security forces or whatever to muster for it. But no, he decided to pick the fight, and there it goes.
Yeah, he certainly finds himself in that situation. And of course, as I mentioned before, he has a companion. I don't have the pictures are not in order. I'm just going by what's on IMDb. But it is, I guess, supposed to be very Vader-esque, the hallway scenes and things of that nature. And he did actually look pretty cool coming down the aisle. But I have to say, Catherine, that although he's wearing dark clothes, and although it looks like the lightsaber might be orange or red or whatever color, I think everybody said it was orange, he didn't necessarily feel like the most evil Force user I've ever seen. In fact, it's very strange. I didn't feel like their intentions were entirely horrible. What do you think about the tone that they had? Are they bad Force users? Are they from the dark side? What do you think?
I definitely had vibes that they were horrible, evil people. I mean, they come on this ship, they slaughter everybody, they break Elsbeth out, who is the big shot in the I can't remember the name of the company that she built all the Star Destroyers for the Empire, and she knows where Thrawn is. I'm like, they're definitely here for this. Like, they're not just mercenaries. They're here because they're believers, and we find out they are believers. Now, I don't think they're not Sith, but like saying that he disappeared at the end of the Clone Wars can be taken in any different ways. Was it during Order 66 and he fled and he just kind of came back and sort of like not exactly an Inquisitor, but somebody who went to work for Thrawn? Maybe he already knew Thrawn after all these years or something. We don't really know. But yeah, I definitely got bad vibes from both of them the minute they ignited their saber. I'm like, yeah, this isn't good. Like when they first stepped out of the ship and their cloaks being all kind of sinister. And I'm like, yeah, these guys are up to no good.
Okay. Well, it is very interesting you said that. And of course, in some of the shots here, which I'm showing just quickly, we can see the other the other Force user along with him. And she's also very aggressive. They have their phasers, but they don't stand a chance against them with the lightsabers. And certainly, I'm not even quite sure why they even bothered. I just would have put my hands up and said, okay, it's all yours. They escaped with Elsbeth. And then we find ourselves in a situation where Ahsoka Tano needs to decipher this wayfinder that she's found. And it is very interesting. She goes back to the team that she knows, which includes Hera, and also her finally seeing Sabine again. Now, would you have guessed that is there some tension between Sabine and Ahsoka at this point in the story, do you think?
Yeah, because she's agitated enough. Like when she says, oh, well, I can't look at the map here. I need a place to clear my head. Get real. And she's being it's like clearly she's upset because Ahsoka apparently abandoned her training or whatever. But it's, the whole story is kicked off by Sabine's incompetence, because she's like, no, I need to do this. I need my own time, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm not going to show up to the ceremony because I'm being fussy and blah, blah, blah. And as a result, the bad guys get the upper hand. Especially since I take it Ahsoka didn't really tell her that, by the way, that because she told her that these 2 guys came along and broke Elsbeth out of jail. So Sabine should at the very least know that this is okay, kind of a troublesome situation, and you shouldn't really be being petty about this right now. And I need my own time. It's like, no, you guys need to work together. Put your personal stuff aside to deal with later and focus on this right now. Like when Ahsoka says, this isn't just about Ezra. This is about, stopping a war. She's like, you think I don't know that? I'm like, well, I don't know. It doesn't seem like you know that because you're being all petty and wanting to take off when Ahsoka just told you that these 2 badasses are coming after this, coming after us for this thing and are after it, So there's definitely tension there. She's definitely, kind of still in her teen rebel type phase. At least that's the way she's kind of acting. But I did like this bit here on the bike with the music playing. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, she manages to kind of brush off the fact that there's this important ceremony taking place on the planet, and she's supposed to be there, a very important figure, obviously having played an important role. And pretends, I think even later on in one or two of the episodes, oh, was that the other day? I totally didn't realize it. And that, I thought that wasn't nice, but she goes back to the place where she remembers hanging out with, well, it's probably Ezra's old place.
Yeah.
And I do like how she rummages through his, let's say whatever belongings are left there, and finds this sort of puck, this memory puck where, she plays it, and there's a message that Ezra left for her where he talks about being thinking of her like a sister. And my first thought was, I always thought that they had a much closer relationship other than brother and sister. In fact, I thought that they were kind of falling in love with one another. What did you think, Catherine? Was this just maybe an old message he made? Or were there sparks between Ezra and Sabine?
Oh, it's been a minute since I've seen Rebels, but he hasn't seen her since then. But the fact that he sent this clearly after the end of Rebels means we know he's alive somewhere, or that he was alive for a time. But the fact that the content of the message is him basically saying, well, sometimes the Jedi has to make the tough decision. I had to do this to stop Thrawn. Kind of shows that he's more mature than her at this point, even though he's, younger. So I don't know if there's anything else going on between them. I never got any real romantic vibes from them in the show, but okay. So she clearly has a lot of feelings for him, but just misses him because, Kanan's dead. Hero's off being a big shot general with the Rebel Alliance, and she took Chopper with her, and Zeb is also working for the New Republic. He went off to work for the Rebels for a while, so Sabine's kind of, just hanging out on her own on the Fall. So she's kind of lonely and, kind of depressed, feels abandoned, whatnot.
Yeah, you make a good point about that. And when you talk about feeling abandoned, the first thing that I thought when I saw Hera, and I was glad to see this character, but it was almost as if she was suffering from empty nest syndrome because she had such a huge crew. She had Zeb with her, of course, Ezra, Sabine. And of course, the idea of keeping the family together was pretty important. We saw Zeb in a previous season, I think it was in The Mandalorian, where at least I believe it's Zeb, or let's say a character that is the same alien race as Zeb, but I think it was him in the pilot's lounge in one of the Mandalorian episodes.
Yeah,
it was him, right?
Yeah.
So I was hoping that we might see him here. We don't have to, but I thought maybe we might see him here. And I felt like she almost has a little bit of empty nest syndrome. I know that she's moved up the ranks quite a bit, but at the same time, it does feel that way, as if the family needs to come back together. Are they hinting that the family is going to come back together in this season?
I would assume so. These are Dave's favorite characters from Rebels that he created, and it seems primed to bring them all back together. So with the season being 8 episodes, I don't know if it's going to be multiple seasons. I assume because it's an Ahsoka show, there's going to be multiple seasons, but whether it's going to be more or less an anthology series, or not, I figure they'll show up at some point.
Mm-hmm. And I certainly do like the lady who plays Hera. I think she does a wonderful job. We also finally see the Loth cat, which I think was absolutely adorable in this. And I think everybody under the sun wants to get one of these life-size Loth cats. But certainly the lore of the Loth cat has played such an important part in Rebels. With Ahsoka, with this entire story. And that was also very touching. I personally loved seeing them exist and be part of that. Now, at some point, Ahsoka does find or realize that Sabine has taken this wayfinder. She goes to this kind of like where she is, where that Loth cat is. Trying. Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. Where she wants to try and decipher or break the puzzle of this map, because when Ahsoka actually obtains the map, she tells Hera, I can't share it with you. We can't share it with you. Someone has to break the code. And so Sabine, sort of like this master hacker, master of a lot of things as a well-trained Mandalorian, takes on the task. And, here she is kind of hanging out with the Loth cat. She does quite a few machinations trying to figure out how to break, and she cracks the code, which is wonderful to see her do. But no sooner does she feel confident in what she's done, Catherine, that she finds herself pretty much under attack. And that part, I think a lot of people are asking questions about, mainly because of what happens during the attack, more or less. First, she's attacked by a droid. And I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but it looks like a very similar droid that attacked Ahsoka when she was in pursuit of the Wayfinder.
They're the same droids, same series. Because that's the whole plot point of the second episode, trying to find out where they all came from, and they all came through the same shipment.
And so clearly one of the questions that I'm asking, and I think a lot of people asked about when more or less Sabine was able to fight off these droids, and it did take considerable effort, but it looked like she was kind of doing them almost with her bare hands almost, which was a bit of a surprise to me, because they look like you can't stop them with your bare hands. So that was something that I found very interesting that happened. But also, of course, she has this confrontation with the Padawan there, and I kind of really like this shot here where you can see the lightsabers together there. Sabine is obviously using Ezra's old lightsaber, from what I understand. And during the fight, she ends up getting, I guess she gets stabbed by a lightsaber. She gets stabbed by a lightsaber. And, what did you think about the fact that she got stabbed by this lightsaber and, walks away? A lot of people are asking questions about this. It looked pretty fatal. I imagine you couldn't survive that. What do you think, Catherine?
I was surprised that Filoni did it at the end of the first episode, because on the one hand, obviously Sabine's not going to die. But I'm like, oh, wow, they really went there. But she's shown in the second episode to also be getting like these special type of med packs, which sort of heal it. So it's possible. People have been, it's no different than if somebody gets shot through the same spot, and if the bullet misses the organs, then it's just, if you can, stop the bleeding quickly enough, then you could live. So you could have, and since lightsabers will instantly cauterize any wound they're stabbing in, it's not like she's going to bleed out from it. So assuming the blade didn't hit any vital organs, then yeah, I buy that.
Well, it's become so controversial. There are a lot of people who think that, it should have been fatal, and, a lot of questions about it. But certainly it is very interesting to see what's happened to her. And I think that after she has this experience where she comes face to face with someone, and it was actually kind of nice to see her fight someone with a lightsaber. Not that she hasn't used the dark saber before, not that she probably hasn't picked up a bunch of lightsabers before, but for the live action, this is the first time we're even seeing her do anything like this. And of course, this is this actress who I'm a huge fan of. She's such an accomplished martial artist. I'm really excited to see more of her fighting and whatever else they decide to have her do. But it seems like she undergoes some kind of a change. She has this conversation with one of the droids that was programmed, I guess, from the Jedi Temple. And the droid starts to talk to her about, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Did you think that this was going to be a foray of Sabine trying to figure out where her life was going to be going, Catherine?
Yeah, because as we see, she hasn't really been with Hera or with Ahsoka or with Zeb. She's kind of been on the fall, just kind of hanging out, which is what Huang says. And of course, he's I guess, currently the oldest character in live action Star Wars, because he's been around for centuries, and so, like, all the way going back to the High Republic era and even beforehand. And he's like, yeah, well, what are you going to do with the rest of, like, and he's like, to be fair, you never asked for them to bring you back. To bring you back into the fold. You never really called them back, because again, she's doing the whole, somewhat juvenile thing of, oh, you dropped me, I'm I'm upset with you type of thing. And the droid's like, well, do you really want to stay here and keep doing that, or do you want to get back to doing so? Like when she asks Ahsoka, where are you living these days? And she's like, oh, well, the ship is fine for me. She's like, what do you do? She's like, well, I go where I'm needed. And she kind of gives Sabine this look as if she's being kind of judgmental, because like, hey, Sabine, you can be doing more than just, lazing around doing nothing. And so the droid says basically the same thing, but in a much nicer way.
Yeah, certainly, Catherine. I think, to be honest with you, she needed someone to be just plain and honest with her and not coddle her around. And perhaps the fact that she hasn't had anyone who's been blatantly honest with her and quite forefront with what's going on and what she's been doing, as she felt, she says, "I'd wasted a whole bunch of other people's time," and he's like, "No, you haven't. You've only wasted your time. It's all on you." And I thought that was very insightful and interesting. Certainly, this droid is very important to the story, especially for Sabine here. But to be honest with you, I wondered also, when it comes to how she's going to do this. And of course, my anticipation was that we would see her in her armor, and we do see that. We that alone was worth it here. You can see her kind of down and looking at her armor and contemplating what her next move is going to be as far as going on with her life. And there she is looking at her helmet. But incidentally, at the same time, now that Elspeth has escaped, it turns out that Hera and Ahsoka find out a little bit more about what's been going on behind the scenes. There's this enterprise, an illegal enterprise, I guess it's illegal. Everybody has full reign over everything before. People who were with the Empire are still working in the same positions. And that's not a surprise. Certainly they can't police the entire galaxy. There just aren't enough people to really be doing that. So that was not a shocker that, to find out that people might be taking advantage of what was going on in these yards. And I think it was in Corellia, right, Catherine?
Yeah, because Sabine was the one, again, using her hacker kind of mechanical genius, if you will, was able to find out from the droid where they came from and that they passed through this shipyard. And I found it interesting that the protocol droid was the one who volunteered, "Oh yeah, they came through here." It's like, well, why didn't you stop it? Well, because the droid that ordered it outranked me and blah, blah, blah. And oh, there's that big hyperdrive is going to be sent off to the ship and to the much larger hyperspace ring, which we haven't seen since the prequel era, which is kind of cool. And so I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, so these Imperial, loyalists are still willing to help. They smuggled in the HK, the assassin droids, which we saw throughout the first episode, and aiding Balin's Skull. And I don't know what his apprentice's name is. I can't remember if they mentioned that or not. Because that's right. Because Huang knew Balin's Skull from recognizing his lightsaber. He didn't know who the apprentice was. And to my knowledge, they haven't named that character yet, unless it's mentioned in the end credits. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised, because obviously in the time of the Empire, there were a lot of people who benefited. So it's not surprising that some people will still be loyal to them. And so I liked how that all went down. And again, to my knowledge, I believe this is the second time we've been to Corellia, because this is where Han Solo was from as well, which we saw in the opening scenes of the Han Solo movie with Alden Ehrenreich. So now, except then it was all dark and overcast. Now we're seeing it like bright and sunny outside, and it does look very similar. So it's like, okay, so it's neat to go back to Corellia, and again, it was a shipyard planet. That's where the Millennium Falcon was built, and so on. So yeah, I thought that was good.
It was amazing, Catherine. And of course, the reason why it appears that all of these parts are being shipped out, yes, it is to make a tidy profit, but it is also to benefit this plan that Elspeth has. And I'm assuming it's with Thrawn. I have no idea who the other players are, but there is this master plan. We find out, which is maybe the biggest and maybe the happiest surprise, because I don't believe this was told to us before, that she is a Night Sister. And that, am I correct in saying this is, we just find this out right now, right, Catherine? Because we didn't know that she was a Night Sister before, did we?
No, we didn't. And that's, now that you bring that up, I remember now, that is where the map came from. The temple was said to be an old planet of one of the Night Sisters, but I didn't realize until they mentioned that at the end that she actually was one of them. And so I'm like, okay, that's a new one. Again, because I'm familiar with her character, her affiliation with the corporation in the prequel era and stuff. I just didn't know that she was a Night Sister. So I don't know if that's new or if that was just there before in the canon somewhere and I missed it. But I thought that's kind of cool, especially when Balin's Skull mentions that, whatever, he alludes to their master plan. It's like, power you couldn't even imagine. So I'm like, this is kind of exciting. But I don't know about you. I want your thoughts on this too. The big surprise for me in this episode was the revelation that the map did not lead to the unknown regions, which was the assumption that Ezra took off somewhere out there, but instead to a new galaxy, which the only other time another galaxy was referenced really in Star Wars was back in the expanded universe, where the Uzong Vong came from another galaxy, and their new canon replacement is the Grisk, mentioned in the High Republic, which are other aliens that I believe they allude that they're also perhaps from another galaxy. I haven't read all those materials yet, but I was really surprised. I'm like, oh, I thought Thrawn was going to be in the unknown regions, maybe hanging out, unknowingly near where because his species and his people come from out there originally. But no, it's in a whole other galaxy. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And it's kind of like a first for live action Star Wars to venture out of our own galaxy.
Yeah, it is exciting that we are venturing outside of the galaxy, and I'm happy for that, because this might be one of the first times that we get to see a little bit more about the Night Sisters and the way that they interpret and understand the galaxy. We haven't really seen that. We know that they are incredible when it comes to their use of the Force, and I always say that they use the Force like it was a religion. It's very different, their interpretation of the Force and the capabilities of the Force and where you can go with it. And certainly, I think seeing, this character here, the only other time I've ever really seen a Night Sister, other than in the television series, let's say, is in the video games, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, where the Night Sisters can do incredible things that we can't imagine. So I'm not surprised that it's a different galaxy. And I almost wonder whether going back to Zeb is because, you remember, he was able to save his species because they could go to, I guess, an area that the Empire couldn't go to. And I wondered, I don't remember all the details, but I took it as a hint that maybe that's going to come into play. The reason why his species survived was because they could hide there. And I wondered if that has something to do with the mystery of it all. So I'm quite intrigued by this. And I'm also quite intrigued when we would hear Elspeth say that she feels that he is calling her, as if there's this calling. And I wondered, how on earth is she feeling? Why does she feel like he's calling her? Is it something in the Force that is calling her? It really is mystifying.
Yeah, it's either has something to do with where he is and what's around him, or maybe she could, like, she senses him call. Maybe she's sensing, because again, the Night Sisters are powerful beings in the Force in a different way that not even the Jedi and the Sith would be familiar with it. So maybe she's just sensing Thrawn's inner thoughts and inner feelings, that he really wants her and wants her back and needs her for whatever his master plan is. And maybe that's what she's alluding to, like he's calling to me kind of thing. But maybe he's not necessarily literally doing that. Or who knows, depending on where he is, there could be something that he's gotten a hold of that allows him to manipulate the Force in some way, that he's able to send some type of message. But we just don't know enough yet. But I do love this shot here, the way the map is being portrayed in the room, and that type of, like, it's not just a simple blue hologram that they popped up on initially. It was like this weird, watery, almost aqua green type thing. Like, that looks really cool. And it's like what I like to see, Star Wars thinking outside the box and coming up with new designs. Because, like, for instance, I got a cell phone here, an Android. Well, there are all sorts of different types of cell phones. Not everything has to look exactly the same. So you can have different versions of same technologies, like holograms, for instance, as we see here. So I did like that. I think that was, like, nice diversification of technology to give a new flavor to things.
Yes, and certainly we do know how complex the society of the Night Sisters is, and I'm hoping that this will help us to explore more of it. And I'm almost wondering, and a question came up, although there's no indication that she should be involved in this, but is Asajj Ventress still alive at this point? And would she ever even be someone who we might see in the series, since it has to, since we're seeing a Night Sister now?
I can't remember. Did she survive the Dark Disciple storyline?
I don't remember.
I don't remember, because I know she had fallen in love with Quinlan Vos, and that would have been a great arc to do. And hell, I just wish they would do it once they finish the Bad Batch storylines. Like, obviously, the animation department is still going to be doing shows. Just go back and do that, But I can't really remember. But Ventress had a radical character change. She's not really a dark side being anymore. And they even hinted at that in her last appearances in Clone Wars. So Yeah, I suppose she could show up if they wanted to. I'm not sure what she would be doing, or I don't think her affiliations would necessarily be. I mean, it wouldn't really be with the New Republic. She'd have no reason to be allied with them, but not necessarily any reason to be allied with Thrawn either. But she could. You never know.
Certainly. And I know at the end of episode 1, there is a dedication to Ray Stevenson, which is quite touching. And of course, as everyone is aware of his untimely passing fairly recently, quite unexpected and shocking. But I have to say, Catherine, that he, along with the rest of the cast, look amazing in the series. Everybody looks really good. I think that they got the casting done very well. And, I think that if we're going to go down this road with Sabine and see her in live action, they picked the right woman. As I said, she's a martial artist. And I'm so excited to see what she does, but also Asanto, who is also a martial artist who plays Elsbeth as well. I'm excited to see what we might see there. Two incredibly talented actors who I'm just so thrilled to see them in these roles going forward. So how long, Catherine, in your opinion, and this is purely speculative, do you think it will take for us to see Grand Admiral Thrawn, which is something I think that everybody is so excited about seeing?
I have no idea. That's a complete crapshoot for me. I don't know. I think it ultimately depends on how many seasons they want to tell this story, because we know they're building up to an eventual crossover movie. So, will there be multiple seasons of Ahsoka before we get to that crossover movie? I don't know. If there are going to be multiple seasons for this particular storyline, then I would guess we're not going to see him until towards the end. But then again, they could surprise us in keeping up the zippy pace that they've established so far and introduce him a lot sooner.
Exactly. And I was just looking for that one scene, and I think it's in another set of pictures where we do see that similar scene here. I think it might have been this one, but where they're in the same room, that same, or at least it felt like the same day when they were looking for Ezra. But, of course, Sabine cuts her hair with a knife, and it is, at least from what I've could see in the picture, I'm not even quite sure if that's what she was using, but now all of a sudden she does look quite different and back on track after, I guess, having lost her way. I don't think she's going to be ignoring any more ceremonies or anything like that. In fact, I think now her motivation has changed. Do we see a different motivation for Sabine now, do you think, Catherine?
Well, she still wants to find Ezra, and she's still committed to like she said, I understand that this is about preventing another war, and given that Ezra disappeared for the sake of getting Thrawn out of the picture, but apparently Thrawn's allies believe he's still out there and can make a comeback, tells her that, oh, what do you know, he might still be alive, which is something the hero learns as well, because Hera thought Thrawn was dead as well. But, oh, well, if his allies are still looking for him and are committed, then maybe they know something we don't. So I think it's all, they're all game on. They're going to go get him.
Yes. And certainly, I think these first 2 episodes opened up a lot. I think they had to take a little bit more time in the beginning to introduce people to the Ahsoka character for those who are not familiar with her. But at this point, after such an extensive advertising campaign, Catherine, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't have Disney Plus who isn't aware about this series coming out. And even not in Disney Plus, I think they've done a lot of advertising for Ahsoka. They went ahead and changed the time slot. I guess it was from Wednesday at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that was another thing that was just kind of annoying, that people waiting for midnight to watch it. Why not drop it in prime time like a regular show if you want to really compete and draw numbers in? But the fact that the fans of this show have clearly watched the other live action Star Wars series. So I'm pretty sure most people watching this are already familiar with Ahsoka, even if they haven't watched the animated material. So yeah, that's another one that's pretty, they probably already know who she is.
Absolutely. And I think that she's maybe has become a somewhat more recognizable character from the Star Wars series now after so many years going forward. So I felt like this was so exciting. I still am trying to figure out what the next steps will be. What else are you hoping to see in the season, Catherine, from the Ahsoka series?
Well, I want to see not just, obviously we're going to find out where Thrawn and Ezra have been, but what have they been doing for the last like 9 years between, roughly 9 years or 10 years between this series and the end of Rebels season 4. Because it's been a while, and Hera makes a good point that she was justified in thinking he died, because I mean, if you're Ezra, when he took the Star Destroyers away, it's not like it wouldn't really track that he's going to go out of his way to save Thrawn, right? It's like, you got to get rid of this guy and put him down. So what have you been doing with him for the last 10 years? And again, the fact that he managed to send Sabine that message after he disappeared means that he clearly landed on his feet somewhere. So I'm eager to find out where that is, and what he's been up to, and why we haven't seen him, or why he didn't reach out to his friends or whatever in the last decade, since he seems to be doing all right, or at least he was whenever he had sent that message to her.
Mm-hmm. And that is very interesting. And a lot of people have speculated that we might see some other characters. I don't believe that we're going to see Luke in this series, but you never know. Although it doesn't.
I mean, funny you mentioned that. I think that's probably why Ahsoka was on Luke's planet in Mandalorian season 3, or was it Book of Boba? No, it was Book of Boba Fett, which might as well be Mandalorian season 3. Because they never really said why she was there. She's just kind of there seemingly for fan service to say, hey, look, Luke and Ahsoka met each other. But I bet she probably went there to recruit him for the mission to find Thrawn, and he's like, nah, thanks, I'm good. He's got other things on his plate. But I'd imagine that we won't be seeing Luke in this, especially since this series is more or less about reuniting the cast of Rebels, and that's if you have Luke come in, that's kind of going to crash the party, because he's at a whole different level of iconography for Luke, whereas Thrawn as a antagonist of the Ghost Crew was established back in the Rebels TV series, so it makes sense to keep the focus on those characters. So I do think that they will be bringing Zeb back as well, and we'll eventually see a reunion of the team. But I don't think that will entail Luke Skywalker.
And do you think Ahsoka has an journey when it comes to being a Force user, or is she in a spot where she wants to be? Do you think she's going to develop into something different than how we see her now?
I'm not sure about that. I really don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know what they develop. I mean, because again, the hint that, because we know she has a bit of the sister, the light side sister in her from Mortis, because she literally used her own life force to resurrect Ahsoka, and that's why she still has like the owl or whatever following her around, and that's kind of the symbol with her. So she has part of that in her, but we haven't really seen her like use that necessarily yet. But whether that'll happen in this season, I'm guessing that this show is going to more or less focus on the hunt for Thrawn and Ezra, with Ahsoka more or less framed as one of the main characters or the main attraction. Like Ahsoka, like for marketing reasons, they're not going to call it Rebels Season 5, even though I have a feeling it's basically what this is. So they're going to market Ahsoka front and center. But I think if you're bringing back the Rebels characters, the focus is going to more or less be on them and as the whole unit, rather than having her do this massive transcendence or something. I mean, it could happen, because the fact that you hear her voice at the end of Rise of Skywalker suggests that she has since died. But that's like 30 years out in the future, so they got plenty of time to play around with there. So, but I'm not sure if I'm sure at the end of this whole Ahsoka Disney Plus, all of her appearances in all these shows, it'll eventually become something else. But I'm not sure if that'll happen in this first season.
And my final question has to do with Hera. And of course, as we know, she did have a child. What do you think happened to her child? Because although we didn't see him in the first 2 episodes, he might still be around there. Do you think he's training with someone? Do you think we're going to see him in this series?
He could be training with somebody, or maybe he's at some academy somewhere. But it would make sense that we might see him at some point.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I also, although I didn't mention it, Choppers is back in this series as well, and is as incredible as he has been throughout all the series. And I enjoyed these first 2 episodes. I'm curious as to what the next episodes are going to bring, and I sure hope we do see more lightsaber fighting and also other interpretations of what's going on when it comes to the Force clearly having a Night Sister here does change things dramatically. And I think it is a nice touch. And I think it's something that was needed. So you could see, different perspectives and understanding of how the Force is used in Star Wars. So I am happy for that. Catherine, what are your last thoughts on these first 2 episodes of Ahsoka?
Well, again, I think the writing is much better than we've seen since Andor. Andor and Ahsoka, I think, are the 2 better shows right now because they just featured the characters they needed to. They didn't have a bunch of subplots. They jump right into it. It's very clear and simple what the story is, and we're off to the races. It's not like a bunch of convoluted stuff that makes no sense like we've seen in some of these other shows. And it's not a show that's, you could tell that yes, they're bringing back beloved characters, but not for the sake of cameos. Like you could tell they're actually going to have a substantial role in the story, which is good because that means that they're putting their story and the character arcs first. And I mean, yes, there's a bunch of references, but they're not intrusive to the story. They're organic to the story. So I like that a lot. And so I just expect more of that. And I think this will probably be one of the best Disney Star Wars show because this is, as I mentioned, a long form TV show. It's not going to be episodic. So I think that's going to lend itself to a lot more rewatches in a way because it does feel like a movie that I'm watching. In the first 2 episodes, even though they're like combined about an hour and a half or so, doesn't feel really long. It's like, even though it kind of is, like in an hour and a half movie, you get a lot more content, a lot more accomplished than you do in the first 2 episodes of this. But I still like the pacing, everything. This is really good, and I look forward to it continuing to fire on all cylinders, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. I am looking forward to more of this series, Catherine. And certainly this has been a long time coming. We've been waiting for the series for quite some time. And I do appreciate you joining me for this review of these first 2 episodes. Catherine and I will be back, if not next week, the week after, for the next 2 episodes review of Ahsoka. Catherine, where can people find you?
You can find me at Slice Night on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Letterboxd. You can find me on the Phantasmagorium Show YouTube channel. We got a lot of reviews backlogged there or cataloged there from Batman reviews, Tarantino reviews, some Star Wars videos, a lot of James Bond videos, a lot of stuff that you can go check out there. And I'm on the Unifying Force show every 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month on the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel.
Excellent, guys. So please do check out Catherine at those locations, and it will be in the description of the bio here of this particular show. Guys, you can always find me here on the Bur Network in Positive Fandom. And Catherine and I will be back. Catherine also has another show here on the Bur Network called Cat's Corner, which will be coming back soon. So please also check that out. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, my moderator, collaborator, and good friend here for being here. As always, we are all goof people. Tom Jr. Jackson, who also has his own YouTube channel as well. Please do subscribe to that when you get a chance. And of course, to Positive Fandom. On behalf of the Network and Positive Fandom, I want to thank everybody in the chat for being here. There's a lot more Star Wars to talk about. And Catherine and I will be back, as I've said, to give you even more information, have more conversations about Star Wars. There's so much to talk about, and this is a great time to be a Star Wars fan, everybody. And guys, remember, thank you for being here. No matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.